So, hello everybody. We're going to make a start now. It's my role today to introduce our speaker. Raquel Ribeiro is an EdTech expert, Google innovator and English language teacher at Cultura Inglesa in Sao Paulo. She is one of the authors of the Teacher Editions 1 and 2 of CUP Evolve series. She blogs about apps and tech for ELT teachers in the world of better learning. She is also, as you may well know, the social media organizer for the IATF for Learning Technologies SIG, and this is the 4th webinar in our LTSIG Fridays. She is going to talk about the topic, which is digital resources to foster collaboration in synchronous or asynchronous instruction. And it's my pleasure to introduce Raquel. Over to you.
Thank you, Phil. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So, as Phil mentioned, this is our topic for the webinar today. Digital resources to foster collaboration in synchronous or asynchronous instruction, and the focus is mobile learning. So the context where the teacher doesn't have a laptop, only a mobile phone and limited internet connection. So this is my context. The idea is if a person with only a very simple resource and limited network connection can develop these tasks. So of course, if you have better resources, this is going to be easy as well. Just before I start, 2 things to mention. It's so important that we are staying home in this context of the pandemic, and all countries have been battling. Here in Brazil, especially in Sao Paulo, where I live and work, we've been battling like the high peak of COVID-19, and that's the reason why online teaching, remote instruction is so important. Just before I start, I'd like to share with you this quote, because I'm here and we try to have the best environment possible, but as you can see, sometimes there might be noise or any sort of interruption. So that's what we are told, find a quiet room and close the door. But this boundary between work and home has blurred. So noise or any other things can be out of our control. Somehow we are all BBC Dad now. I think you remember this funny quote. Very well. When we consider the online educational experience, of course, there's the before COVID-19 and the during the COVID-19. That's precisely what we have been going through. Synchronous is when the online or distance education happens in real time. This is what is the ideal, the perfect scenario. This is precisely what we are having right now. Many teachers in the world would love to have this possibility to video stream and talk to students and use the breakout rooms. But the reality is that just a small number of us have this privilege for a number of reasons. There's also asynchronous learning. The asynchronous experience occurs through online channels as well, but without real-time interaction. Both are really important and have a place in the online educational experience. For this session, I'm going to share my walk and my experience using the apps I'm showing you. So Google Classroom and Edmodo, which are examples of virtual learning environments. Google Docs, which is a Word document, one of the simplest documents to use, and very mobile friendly. Also, it is easy because you don't have, it's not heavy for, let's say, the mobile learning environment. WhatsApp, which is not really considered when we are talking about education, but again, the COVID-19 context has changed and shifted lots of beliefs as well. And a dear friend that's very often forgotten, the voice recorder. So let's travel through, and please feel free to ask questions in the comments. My colleagues from the LTSIG are keeping an eye on the chat while I go on here, and I'll be very glad to answer those questions afterwards. While you are watching the presentation, I really need you to picture using the possibilities presented, which are some, of course, we teachers are so creative and we find all the ways to adjust to our very own contexts. And that's the way I would like you to follow the presentation. Would this work for my context, for my teaching context, for my students' reality? Maybe, maybe not. We all have to use this parameter. Well, when we think of collaboration tools, there is a goal to build communication and engagement because we are teaching English as a foreign language. So when we consider like Google Classroom or Edmodo, they were designed to be used in regular schools for all the subjects. And then one of the things is that they were really, and they have been mostly used, the virtual learning environments, to share files, to assign written tasks or compositions. And this, in terms of language teaching, is a no-no, because we need our students to test the language, to communicate, to exchange ideas, to learn through the mistakes, to rephrase what they are saying. That's a very important cognitive step to speaking. It's another language, another culture, a different organization of the words. So the key point in our English language teaching scenario is to have the communication and engagement through the comments along the classes. This also requires using the resource Google Classroom steadily. You need to have students understand, because it is a natural part of your class, that they are going to voice their opinion somehow. Let me show some examples of what I do. I have covered the names, of course, to preserve students' identities. This is an example of a task in the very first day when we had the lockdown here in São Paulo and the schools were closed. And we have here a letter of application. That's the idea for the group. We brainstormed that. And I asked them to read. So of course we need to attach things, but it cannot only be a means to attach files. What is it that you do with the files attached? And they share their very own opinions and learnings. Even though everybody read exactly the same article, they come up with quite different ideas. Another example is when we consider elementary groups. People always ask me about this. Raquel, it's very easy to work with an advanced level group. What about a basic 1, basic 2 level group? It is pretty much the same, but we have to adjust our expectations on their production and of course, provide more guidance. So this is a class and there is a context, which is the weekend. They are learning past simple. And we had a scene and the video is attached here as well. Some questions, and these resources, I do not attach the resources at once, because when you do that, people don't pay attention at all. So what I do, I build this message slowly. So first I posted about, okay, making small talk about last weekend. And then I go on, okay, let's watch a scene from Friends, and then the infographic. So we build this along the classes and students refresh, which is pretty much the idea of using social network. If you are on Instagram, for example, you know you have to refresh to keep up with the feed. Look at the answers. They are simple answers. They are basic. They were basic too at this moment here. But everybody is able to join and to say. maybe you say, Raquel, what if they misspell a word? I can, as a teacher, reply to that, or maybe I can ask the student to rephrase. So they very quickly rephrase it, delete the previous comment, and write it properly with the necessary corrections. Why is it that Google Classroom and Edmodo do not allow students to edit or teachers to edit? It's possibly due to the possibility of bullying. So in order to avoid this, nobody can edit the answers. So in case there's a mistake, either the teacher points out or we can tell the students and they fix the answers. But what happens when this is going on? The student is typing, the student is learning. It's not me showing lots and lots of screens and PowerPoints. This now that I'm showing you, it was a work with a more advanced group and exactly related to the context of the pandemic. It is attached here. Let me just. So we have here the link of the BBC News. And we worked with, this one was precisely when it was about, we were about to start the lockdown here in São Paulo. And I used this as a dictation, the key sentences, and they analyzed the verbs. And then we built like this together. So remember what I told you, I do not type everything and send. We go slowly through that. And this is the attachment, the article from BBC. Students feel very encouraged to work with news and especially current news because it gives them a sense that, look, it's something real and concrete. More often than not, we can connect what is going on to the content of the lesson. In this particular moment, I decided to ask them to analyze the grammar structures on their own, and they collaborated here. Sometimes when it's not possible that every student has a device, we can have them work in pairs. So when you see here like two colors, it's because this belongs to a student, but two students collaborated and devised the answer. Let me show you something. This, specifically speaking, is based on this blog I wrote. It was published, I think, a few days ago about using global news in online lessons. So in the World of Better Learning blog, I give more details and share other ideas. And there are many other things. And these supporting every teacher series, which I believe you're all familiar with, and give us many ideas in terms of not only using the tools, but integrating this with a communicative purpose. So really worth checking. Then there comes Google Docs. Well, why Google Docs? Because maybe if your school is already facing the lockdown, then it's complicated, depending on the context you are, to have everybody join a Google Classroom or Edmodo environment. So a very easy way, you create a doc and guarantee that you share and enable this doc to be completed. So I'm showing here that the first thing when you create a document is to share and then opt for advanced. So you can choose to actually enable edit for anyone with the link. It happens that when we do this process, if the document is completely blank, it becomes like really, really messy. I'm talking about the average of 20 students, that's what I work with. If you have less students, even so, it can be a bit messy. So I suggest here a way of organizing by using tables. So you create tables and you divide here. Maybe you have two students in one slot, so they work together, or maybe one per slot. And of course, there's a task. Let me show you a video, which is going, everything I'm mentioning here In the end of the presentation, I'm going to share with you a digital handout. So everything is going to be there, okay? This is a recent video that I posted in my channel, and I'm going to show just a little bit of how it is that we use now in this scenario. Thank you. That we use Google Docs on mobile. Because, Raquel, but it's easy on the computer, everything's just easy to spot, but there are a few changes if you have to share the document, enable editing, create tables, if you are working on a mobile. Thank you very much. So halfway through the video after I give some... So the first thing, I'm going to create a Google Docs, so I click here. Let's name the document at first, let's say communications. And the next step is to share. In the computer, there's this icon here, and that's where you should go. But on mobile, the step is share and export, link sharing. And so you see, this video gives you a step-by-step with this focus on the mobile environment, which does make a difference. Students will collaborate in the cell phones, in their mobile phones. I'm going to show you a scene of when it happened in class. And I filmed so we can have an idea of how it is that they go about that.
Where is it? Treatment from the dust, isn't it? No, it's not treatment. Oh. Okay.
And this is how it looks for the teacher if you are following a computer, or maybe if you are following on your phone, it's just smaller, but you can keep track of what is going on. And then students get to understand what they have to do. Well, then there is one limitation when we think of working with virtual learning environments or a Google document, because there's no video and there is no image. Suppose you have a very limited resource teaching context. So I suggest the app Voice Recorder. A voice recorder, it's an app which is built in the vast majority of phones. And if it happens that you haven't got it, it's easy. You go to the App Store, download it, and it's free. I have been using the voice recorder since like 2016, 17. So it's for sure very easy to find. Why do I suggest a voice recorder? Because when we type and write, there's no emotion. And you can insert your voice to a document or to a message to communicate and encourage students. So let me show you how it works. This video has no sound, it's just so you can understand the idea. So this is my phone, the screen. And then I create, when I click here, let me go back just a little bit. When I click here, I record the message. And then I name it so I understand which group, and I share, I can export this message. When I think of sending a message to students, I tried at first to record a message on WhatsApp and share that to Google Classroom or Edmodo. In Google Docs, it's not possible to share, but you can attach a link, which is pretty much the same. What happens is that when you try attaching a WhatsApp message to Google Classroom or Edmodo, some phones need to find another third-party app in order to actually listen. So if you do that with a voice recorder, it is easy to upload to Drive and everybody gets to receive the message. And best of all, to listen. What sort of messages can we send? Here's a model of the first one I sent. There are many groups, so I teach little kids aged in between 5 and 6. I also teach advanced learners, and I teach upper intermediate levels or basic learners. This first message was when things were about to start. So it was a message of encouragement and saying, look, everything's going to be okay. Here's what you can do meanwhile, right? Hoping they were well and safe. Sometimes that's it. We have to send a message to parents to say, look, I'm here. Here's what we're going to do, because it speaks a lot more than just the written words. Down here, there's a message, and it's written in Portuguese because this is a model of how I communicate with the families. You know, the families, especially with little kids or young teenagers, they need to know what sort of path we're going to follow. And sometimes I also record a task, a homework, like here is a picture dictation. So I recorded myself telling them to draw like pencil or pink pencil or a blue book and so on and so forth, so they can perform the task. And thinking of task and the role of technology, the role of technology in the pandemic context is to build a bridge and to communicate and say, look, we're going to advance and we're going to go through this together. It's not to overload students with lots of screen time and technology all the time. So if you can work with dictations, this is so simple. But Rachel, this looks back from the 70s. Who does that? It's so effective. For the little kids, a picture dictation. For the adults, it depends on their level. Instead of sharing a screen with questions for conversation, you can dictate those questions. And if you haven't got the video resource, which is the context of my webinar today, use a voice recorder, give them directions of what to do. So it's a simple tool, but it's a very effective one. And there comes WhatsApp. I must confess that when I first heard of WhatsApp being used for education, I was very suspicious and I was not on board with the idea. Because WhatsApp is very personal. There's your personal number there. So how am I going to use this? Happens that I'm talking about Brazil, and I was talking to a Brazilian educational magazine just last week about it. If you consider state schools, public schools, countryside, very small cities in our huge country here, that may be the only possibility of communication. So it's something to be considered. Again, COVID-19 teaching context brings us so many possibilities. And let's analyze and see what is possible to be used in our context. So how is it that we can use WhatsApp to work with students? First, you have to decide, are you going to work with the students or are you going to communicate with the parents? Because everything depends. First thing to do, and you possibly have to keep on doing this many times, establish group rules, actually type the group rules. And in WhatsApp, if you use it, you can star a message. So the message is kind of always there and pinned. So if you need to use it again, you can find it easily. The group rules should be just a few, and you have to remind the group again if necessary. if it is necessary. So you can establish the time or period of interaction so people don't keep on sending you messages all the time. The language, if you're talking to parents, the mother tongue, and if you're talking to the children or to your students, then the language they're studying. Moments for written interaction, moments for voice interaction, because that's a possibility in WhatsApp. I have here one screenshot of a very simple instruction, a question. So this is one language you can use when everything all caps, it means you have to reply. It gives you the possibility to encourage learners to use emojis, which is a language. And it is the principle, it can be applied, a very similar principle that there is in Google Classroom to correct. So here I refer to the message, reply with a correction. This can be a voice task, and they can reply by speaking the answer. A recent update in WhatsApp allows up to 4 people to have a mini video conference. I don't know if you have tried, and it's really interesting. 2 or 3 people can join. So again, if you're thinking of a context where people do not have access to Skype, Zoom, this can work. Maybe you can have students working in smaller groups. Everything is an idea or possibility. This is another. How are you today? In this one, I specifically used an emoji. One thing that I never expected to use WhatsApp, but I have been using this steadily in this COVID-19 context with 2 parents, because the child is in the countryside, far away with the grandparents, and that's the only way they communicate. So I'm sending the instructions to the mothers. Okay, this is what we had in classroom. Please play this, please go to this page. It's an alternative. The feedback we get as teachers and also other people who have been talking to me is that it's a way of being there. Of course, one of the things that I have always been more careful and resistant about WhatsApp is that it doesn't keep an organized flow such as what we can have in Google Classroom or Edmodo. But again, we are considering extreme situations where this is the only possibility for a while, yes, just to have some ideas. The lesson preparation, it goes the same way. We need to have in mind the fact that communication and possibilities to use the book, to open the book, to copy are encouraged. Because there's too much technology already. May that be via a video streaming class, or maybe if they have to watch a video or interact on their phone. So it's really important that this is one step, one bridge for communication and guidance. But students need to have their time for concrete tasks such as writing, going to the book, referring to the book. It's also important. Then I think, but Raquel, synchronous or asynchronous instruction? Which tool should I use? Well, all tools suggested here, they can work both ways. Personally, the first thing is to contact your learners, to make sure that the parents, if it is the case, or the learners, are aware of the possibility chosen. Once you have that, agree. Ideally, there should be synchronous moments, and of course, post-class commitment and homework for later. As for the tools, I have used all of them. I just don't recommend using everything all together. It's really overwhelming. So if we are talking about the context where a mobile phone is the tool available for both students and the teacher, sometimes one phone for more than one student. So keep it simple and straight to the point. Well, Edmodo and Google Classroom are both great, mobile friendly, and give us this possibility to organize. I'm going to share with you this, which is the digital handout. But let me show you something. I wrote this article for the IATEFL blog last year, precisely almost a year ago. And it compares using Google Classroom and Edmodo. And then I have some screenshots of using Edmodo and the possibilities. So this is going to be attached as well. There's another article I wrote specifically about using Google Classroom. And then there are more details here. Obviously, Google Classroom or Edmodo are not for children, must be over the age of 13. So that's why I'm also mentioning WhatsApp here. There's the possibility of email, but email doesn't give you the same dynamics. And of course, the Google Docs. But I believe our key star that's going to make a huge difference, apart from the #1 concern, which is to foster and to encourage students typing and writing and speaking what they think, what they consider important, is from time to time, add the element of your voice as a teacher. Yeah, maybe you're going to just clarify instructions for a task. Maybe it's just to say, look, we're going through a different period, and give them a word of comfort. Maybe it's to challenge them through a dictation, for example. This tool is very simple, and unfortunately, many people don't use it. So get started. Do not overuse. Like anything in life, if you overuse it, it becomes annoying. Also, when you create the voice message, a personal tip, name it so you don't get lost later, and save it to Drive. That's the easiest way. It is there. Here is the digital handout. So if you go, and I would like you to try the mobile phone experience. So go to your mobile phone, please. Open your browser. I use Chrome, but I don't know if you use Safari or any other browser. And please type bit.ly/digital tools the way it is. You need to respect the caps, _ Raquel. I'm asking you to access this via short link because short links are a way to communicate with our learners. So when you create a short link, maybe if it's not possible to be clickable, especially in the first moment you communicate, this is easy to type. We adults, it takes us a while, but if you teach teenagers, you know, it is amazing because they're so fast and they help us all the time. If it is that you decide to use Google Docs, I suggest that every time you write something new or a task, you keep it on the top of the page, because then what you did before goes down and what is like most recent is still up. You can use one document, one Google Docs, and keep building for many classes or create one per class. It all depends on what you think is suitable for your group. Keep in mind that we are in this together. I'm a teacher, So I taught before, and I'm here talking to you, and in an hour I'm back and teaching again up to 8 at night. And we have been teachers of all subjects all over the world doing an effort. Actually, there are 3 things that we have been doing. We have been making a huge effort to reach out our students and the community and families according to the context we teach. We are committed because all teachers I know, and I hear and I listen and read stories and I follow on social media, we are finding ways and we are studying and learning and adjusting in a very short time. And of course, the key ingredient, teachers have love. We love what we do. We love the people we interact with, even though there are differences, but we know that we are going through very trying times. Depending on where you are, the city where you are, you know that the effects are maybe lighter, maybe okay, or maybe even stronger. So it's not about only teaching now. It's not about the content only. It's about engaging students. It's about encouraging each other, encouraging ourselves and our colleagues. There is an initiative by Google for Education posted, I think, a few days ago. If you go to the Twitter, you can find it, called Virtual Coffee Breaks. So the idea is that you decide with your group of teachers 1 or 2 times a week, a day, where you meet online just to have some coffee and laugh, and like for 5-10 minutes, because of course we are so busy. I have been doing this with my community of teachers where I teach, and some join, some don't. But again, everything is how much we go on the path steadily. If you do it once, if you use Google Classroom only once, chances are it's not going to work. But if there is a purpose, if you give your students a chance to be part of this, you are building a record of your class, which is not attaching documents, but it is giving students opportunities to share their impressions and their learning. For sure, this is going to be better and more engaging. And we're still learning so much. I'm happy and I thank the Learning Technology Special Interest Group. It's like my family. We've been together for a while. I thank you all who are here following the webinar. And thank you so much for being here, for the support. And as we are learning so much, we have been learning so much through these times, I encourage you on social media, the channels you use, to share if you have insights, if you learn something here, a little trick here, or anything that was, wow, that worked for me. Go to social media, just post it very quickly. You could use the hashtag COVID-19 teaching if you want this to reach out to all the teachers. Because, you know, all of us, we get difficult days, and maybe one thing that you read for like a flash of a second can give you an insight, and then, oh my God, that's a good idea. Let's go and let's keep helping each other. So thank you very much for being here. And now I think it's the time for the questions, yeah? If we have questions, if you'd like to ask.
Okay, can you hear me, everybody? I have been collecting questions, Raquel. So I have a few things that you may want to answer. So I'll start from the beginning. Chris Fry had a few questions. The first was that somebody, Darren White, suggested using Google Slides instead of Google Docs, and to format them to be A4 and use that because it's easier to add media to Google Slides instead of Google Docs.
Yeah, Google Docs, actually, Google Slides, actually, it's easier. You can add audio. It's easy. You don't have to actually share a link. It's there in the menu. I just suggested the docs because if a person has never used any sort of documents before, this may be something simpler to use. But yes, it's very effective, Google Slides, and also really mobile friendly.
Yes, I have used Google Docs, Google Slides, sorry, in A4 format. So it looks like a page, and you can assign one page to each student or group, depending on the activity you are doing. And it's also cleaner in terms of organization. Yes.
Yeah, in terms of adding media, really cool for taking tasks. Yeah.
I've done collaborative writing, for example. So I added a picture on each page, and then students wrote about the picture on that page. And then I could easily turn the Google Slides into a kind of ebook. So that's just an idea.
And
let's move on with the next questions. Any way to share audio files easily?
Well, in Google, in Classroom and Edmodo, you just attach it as a file. In Google Docs, what you have to do is first you upload it to Google Drive, and then you copy the link and insert. But there is an add-on called docentedu.com. Let me type here. Add-ons, it's like an app store for Chrome or for Google products. It's a way, if you are into that, it's going to make attaching files to Google Docs easier.
Excellent. Okay. Next question. How do you cope with privacy rules, especially with very young learners? Excellent question.
Well, with young learners, we have to deal directly with the parents. It seems that there is this reputation that parents are difficult to cope with, and yes, sometimes there are situations and exceptions to the rules, but mostly, especially now in the context we are going through, they have been very understanding. So I keep a parallel possibility of an email, all right? But there is no formula. We agree on something, and then we have to see and deal with the cases.
All right. I have another question, and it's about the workload to prepare all these activities.
It's actually less, and this was one of the things that naturally convinced me to start using the digital tools. Both virtual learning platforms, Edmodo and Classroom, you can reuse a post and, of course, change a little bit here and there. You can attach the links and have a kind of a draft, so it is there for you. And in Docs, what I do sometimes, I create a task or type everything, and then I color in white and keep it down the page. So when I need it, instead of having to type everything all over again on mobile environment, I just select, because I know where it is, and color. So, and everything is there. I believe that the digital tools actually help us with the workload, because then we learn a few tricks here and there. But most importantly, it gives the students a chance to take part.
All right. I have another question from Chris. When you correct errors, do you reply to all? Do you oops, can you hear me?
It's breaking up, but I think
yeah,
I get
it's breaking up. I can type the question in the text chat.
If I reply individually or if I reply to the group, is that?
Yes, exactly.
You know, we are together in that environment just for the learners and me. So the possibility is we reply direct to that student, but it's there for everybody to see. When possible, I try to deal with this in class. But many times what happens is that they misspelled a word because of typing, because of the keyboard or something simple. So most times I just point out and ask them to rephrase it and delete the previous comment. That works a lot better. They feel better if this happens. But that's what I usually do.
Excellent. Another suggestion from Christo is that if all the material, when you use WhatsApp, if all the material is posted as media, then it's easy to find when you go to group media. All the
media that's a possible way. Yeah, in terms of going to the media, everything's there. In terms of the lesson organization, it may look messy, but again, everything's what we make of it. So we find ways of using all caps, for example, and there's also the possibility of using bold or italics. You create a communication language with the learners.
All right, one more. Have you used Padlet? Do you have any suggestions for that?
I have used Padlet. I think Padlet is great, but considering now they have opened out because of the pandemic, but before the pandemic, they were restricting the usage, the number of Padlets that they would have. So that's when, like last year, I stopped using Padlet for that reason, because of these limitations. But now we are living a very good moment. And in Padlet, you can very easily attach audio, and it's beautiful to collaborate as well. So we are in a great moment to use Padlet. If we consider, and let's see how it goes, yes? After the pandemic, let's see how the resources will help us keep using them for free, or if they will to only paid versions.
Yeah, Padlet used to be free. When it went paid, it restricted you to add only a couple more Padlets to the ones you already had. So if you were an avid user like I was, I had like 40 boards.
I know,
and you can recycle the boards. So if the boards become unused or old or outdated, you can delete that board and you create one new.
Yeah, so it's a way of...
If you already had a number of Padlets, that worked fine. If you were new to Padlet, however, the number was very low, and it didn't.
That's the
practical.
thing.
Yeah.
And then you need to recycle the Padlet, so students can't keep track of it. Yeah?
Exactly. Have you used voice typing for Google Docs?
Oh yes, voice typing is my friend. I have a whole section presentation that includes voice typing. This is great for speech recognition, and that is a beautiful work if you pair using voice typing recognition with a dictionary, so students can check their pronunciation, choose if they want British or American pronunciation. That is really cool.
All right.
A lot.
Irina suggests meeting words. I don't know about this app, but it says very helpful. It's to do collaborative projects.
Interesting.
Have you heard of that? If not, we can all go later. Irina, would you like to elaborate on meeting words?
Maybe you can type there.
Yeah. No, I can give you the microphone if you want, but I don't know if she's ready. Okay. So I think those are all the questions. Oh, Irina is speaking. Fine.
Yeah. So meeting words is very, very easy, simple tool. What I especially like that every student has its own color. They work collaboratively, and everybody has its own color. I can see how much every student writes in this very project. And also they have a chat and they discuss something. Two columns, the column for project and the column for discussion, and very, very simple. Google Docs is perfect, but for more experienced uses. I start with meeting words, and then later I move to and suggest them to use Google Docs. This is my
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for the suggestion. Yeah, meeting words. Yeah.
Excellent. So are there any more questions? We have a few minutes together.
If we don't have any more questions, I'd like to suggest our selfie, our traditional goodbye.
Yeah, an end of session gallery view selfie. So if you want to appear on camera, you don't have to, of course, but if you'd like to share your webcam for the end, we'll put these on and we'll take a little screenshot. I know he likes to do this too. And yeah, so if you want to share your webcams, we'll do a little LTSIG Fridays selfie. Give it a moment. Hey, and then we so I realised who was in the room.
Faces now.
Saw some of you at the beginning, and some of us joined halfway through or a little way through. Welcome all. I think we've got everyone that's prepared to just quickly do your hair. That's right. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And what should we do? Should we do a countdown, Raquel? Is that Vicky? 3, 2, 1.
Okay. So 3, 2, 1, and we wave.
Okay.
Do we wave? Do we clap? What do we do?
What do we want? Wave or clap? What do you think? Whatever.
Okay,
we're waving. Waving looks good.
So,
waving looks good. Yeah. 1 or 2.
So
waves.
3, 2, 1.
Wave.
Wave.
And again.
Okay.